engage in precisely those acts of lawlessness. But we need to avoid them. And the only way to avoid them is to insist on accountability through a process that is well governed, that is well represented, and that is managed, I think, to be fair to everyone. That will be a challenge for the Libyans.
That will be the challenge.
Yeah, it will be a challenge for the
you wonder
Libyans.
how a post-revolutionary Libya will deal with the international community, a lot of whom gave support to Muammar Gaddafi's regime, and in fact saw him as a model of a leader that they'd reined in from being a rogue leader to a leader they could do business with.
Yeah. That was unfortunately one of the tragic ramifications of rehabilitating Gaddafi's regime and integrating Gaddafi once again after 2003 into the world community. We made a deal with a dictator. We did it because we thought he would cooperate on the security, war on terror area. We did it because we wanted oil. And we did it, we also thought he was durable, stable, and that he would remain in power for a very long period of time. Libya in that regard is not an exception. This was the case also in Egypt. This was the case also in Tunisia to some extent. I think the Western world has to, at this point, engage in a very serious act of re-evaluating all the assumptions that govern how they deal with the Arab world at this moment in time.
A lot of re-evaluations, I think, taking place right now. Tariq, thank you very much indeed for the moment. Tariq Youssef from Brookings there. Let's just take you through the day's events around the Middle East. Pro-Gaddafi militia have fired on protesters who are calling for him to go in the Libyan capital. The security forces are fighting to win back control of AlJazeera just outside Tripoli. Several protesters have died in clashes with security forces during Iraq's day of rage over lack of water, food, electricity and jobs. Basra's governor has already resigned in response to the protests. They've already kicked out their president. Now tens of thousands of Egyptians are rallying again, keeping up the pressure on their military rulers to carry out the reforms they promised. And Friday prayers have again turned into mass protests in Yemen, where pro- and anti-government groups have held rival rallies. So back to Libya. The UN Security Council due to discuss the situation later on Friday. Let's go live to UN headquarters and Kristen Salumi there. Kristen, what can we expect out of the Security Council meeting today?
Well, we've just spoken to members of the European delegation of the Security Council who have told us on background that they've been working on a draft resolution that will include sanctions against Libya. What's on the table includes an arms embargo against Libya, a travel ban and asset freeze for Muammar Gaddafi and any other leaders who are later seen to be responsible for the violence that's being committed there right now. What's not in this draft resolution, apparently, a no-fly zone. That's something that was asked for by the deputy ambassador of Libya to the United Nations here earlier in the week. He is one who has broken ranks and defected from the government. That no-fly zone was also brought up by the United States as a possibility, but it apparently will not be included in this draft resolution. No ICC referral either. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, has said that the International Criminal Court should get involved to look at possible crimes against humanity. Apparently that will not be part of this draft resolution either. But I should point out that this resolution, which will be discussed at the meeting later, is still very much a draft. It has not yet even been circulated to the other 15 members of the Council. This is very much a preliminary document that they are starting to negotiate on later this afternoon.
OK, Kristen, thanks very much indeed for that. Kristen Salumi at the UN there in New York. Well, the unrest in the Middle East is continuing to push up oil prices. Rob Reynolds reports from Los Angeles on the effect the price hikes are having on consumers.
Motorists in Los Angeles are reeling from hefty fuel price hikes.
Yeah, ridiculously high. Sure, they get away with it. Who's going to stop them?
Oil has flirted with the $100 a barrel mark in recent days as the violent upheaval in oil-rich Libya has reduced worldwide oil supplies. U.S. consumers are now paying $3.22 on average for a gallon, or about 3.8 liters, of gas. In car-dependent California, the average price hit $3.74 a gallon on Thursday. Those prices force people like aspiring actor Sam Weller to make tough choices.
I'll literally have like $10 in my pocket, and it's sort of like I have to split that between food and gas. So I'll put $5 in the tank in order to get me over the hill, and then I'll use the remainder of the $5 to somehow scrap together lunch.
But the pain doesn't stop at the pump. The high price of fuel has a ripple effect all through the American economy at a time when it's still struggling to recover from the recession. Higher cost of transport boosts the cost of food, travel, manufactured products, and a host of items from airline tickets to eggplants. Price increases act like a tax on consumers, reducing their spending power.
If consumers react to it believing that prices are going to go higher, their confidence will decline, which will cause them to cut back even further on consumer discretionary purchases. That hasn't happened yet, but that's certainly one of the risks that we face.
Traders say the images coming out of the Middle East have spooked the oil market.
It is easy to create fear in the oil market when it is centered on the most important oil-producing region in the world.
The potential impact on jobs and growth, with unemployment already at 9%, makes policymakers in the White House nervous.
Our focus now is on monitoring this and making sure that we know what our options are if they need to be taken.
Some economists predict U.S. gas prices will climb nearly 40 cents per gallon in the coming days. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
Let's get some other news now. Elections taking place in Ireland that could signal the end for the government there. Let's go back to Stephen in London. Stephen.
Thanks, Shirley. Yes, to say that Irish voters are angry at the collapse of the economy would be a massive understatement. So the Irish government has no illusions about what will be the voters' verdict. It's bracing itself for a heavy defeat. The Fianna Fáil party has dominated Irish politics for almost 80 years, but public service cuts, high taxes and soaring unemployment have all left people very disillusioned. From Dublin, here's Rory Challins.
After the bust, the chance for people to vent their anger. Ireland started its voting early and a high turnout is expected. That's a sign the Irish might punish their leaders.
I would have voted for the current government not to be in power, and for the specific reasons that they've just made so many bad decisions over the last, well, in my opinion, 5 or 6 years.
I actually went independent for my first choice. Why? I mean, everyone's kind of saying that Fine Gael are going to make a change, but I don't really feel that they are. It's pretty much the same.
The polls are all pointing to an election meltdown for the ruling Fianna Fáil party, so long the dominant force in Irish politics.
The party was founded in 1926, and since it first came into government in 1932, it has dominated political affairs in this state. And even when it has been out of government, the least number of seats it has had, it's never fallen below 60 seats. And often it has been above 70, and on a few occasions it has been above 80. So this represents a collapse for Fianna Fáil, and it will take them a generation, a political generation at the very least, before they can repair it.
Fianna Fáil took Ireland into the good times, but crucially they were in power when the dream went bad. A banking bust, a $115 billion bailout, and years of austerity measures ahead do not make for a happy voter. All the main parties have promised they'll renegotiate the terms of the country's humiliating loans, but it's doubtful there's much room for manoeuvre. The real masters of Ireland now live over the sea in Europe and New York. Whoever wins this election has a tough job on their hands. Rory Challins, Al Jazeera, Dublin.
So, Rory, well, he's joining us live from Dublin now. What is the expected outcome?
Well, all those opinion polls that were pointing to Fianna Fáil hammering are also saying that their arch rivals Fine Gael are going to be the likely winners here. Maybe by not quite enough to form an outright majority, probably though by enough to make some sort of coalition, either with some independent MPs or with the Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party are centre-left and Fine Gael are centre-right, so they're not natural bedfellows, but they have actually proved quite effective in working together in the past. So that's what's expected here, a Fine Gael and Labour coalition.
And a poison chalice, Rory, for that coalition like the one in Britain, because they're going to be facing a lot of financial challenges, aren't they?
Yeah, well, there are huge challenges ahead for whoever wins this election. One of the things that whoever gets in will try to do is to try to renegotiate that humiliating $115 billion bailout. Fine Gael have said that they want to do a couple of things to try and renegotiate that. The one thing they want to do is spread the hurt, as it were, rather than putting all the burden on the Irish taxpayer. They want some of the creditors that lent to the banks to take, as they put it, a haircut, and they also want to lower the interest rate that the country is paying on its debt. But there are also other things like a 13.5% unemployment rate that has to be got down. Whoever gets in will also be fighting to keep the 12.5% corporate tax rate, which has attracted so many multinational corporations into Ireland over the past decade. Ireland and France don't like that, and they want it to go. But perhaps the most difficult challenge for whoever gets in is to detoxify Irish politicians in the eyes of the public. They are quite unpopular here. I heard yesterday a tour guide telling a joke, a rather elaborate joke to a bunch of tourists about how all politicians are two-faced. So if we ever get to a stage where tour guides aren't telling jokes like that, then whatever government has come in will have done a pretty good job, but they might have a while to wait.
The only politician joke I know is how can you tell if a politician's lying or not? Well, his lips are moving. All right, Rory, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us from Dublin. Let's go back to Shuli in Doha now.
Stephen, thanks very much indeed for that. Let's get a look at some other world news now. Rescue teams are continuing to scour rubble after a powerful earthquake in New Zealand, but the threat of aftershocks is hampering the operation. 113 people are known to have died. Some 200 are still missing, with hopes fading of finding more survivors. The trial of an American CIA contractor accused of killing 2 men in Pakistan has been postponed until March the 3rd. Security was tight at the prison in Lahore, where Raymond Davis is being held and where the hearing took place. If convicted, Davis faces the death penalty, but Washington insists he has diplomatic immunity and should be released. And Toyota is recalling more than 2 million vehicles in the United States. Once again, it's because accelerator pedals could become trapped in floor mats, but shares in the car maker gained more than 2% in Friday trading on Tokyo's stock market. Do stay with us here on Al Jazeera. My colleague Kamal Santamaria will be here at the top of the hour with more on the day of protest, with rallies and protests taking place around the Middle East. Just before we come to that, let's have a check